So, good morning to everybody. So it's really early. Every day it's more and more early at the same time. So I don't understand why. So today the lecture will be divided into two parts. So in the first part I will explain the topological finite test results that Gérard was alluded to yesterday. And next I will go back to the growth of group and explain things which are related to growth, but to entropy, but with a slightly different point of view. Okay, so let me just recall the setup. So M, the space M, we first consider the space M of all compact metric space. And we are interested in not really of the space, but the quotient by the equivalence relation of being isometric. And we are also interested in the space M of delta HD that Gérard defined yesterday, which is the space of all compact connected metric space, locally cat 0, and having all those properties, and having a universal cover which I denote Y tilde D tilde, which is delta hyperbolic and such that, as usual, the entropy of this universal cover is bounded by H, and the diameter of the quotient the diameter of Y, of the quotient of the universal cover by its fundamental group, is less than D. Okay? So it's not important if you can see what is written here. It's the same definition as yesterday. And at some point I will have to add the assumption non-elementary to the space, but I don't want to be too much precise in order not to lose you about some details. Anyway, so this is the space we are interested in, and the main theorem that was announced yesterday is that this space M D H delta, where is the D, modulo isometry is a complete, so with respect to the Gromov-Hausdorff distance, so this space, which is a subset of this one, is complete and compact, in fact compact, okay? So the proof will go in two steps. We first show it is complete, and then show that it is pre-compact, and okay? So let me just sketch the proof. Of this statement. So we learned yesterday that the space M. So what we have to do to show that the space is complete, we have to take a Cauchy sequence. So let's call Yn Dn a Cauchy sequence. Cauchy sequence with respect to the Gromov-Hausdorff distance. And we want to prove that this Cauchy sequence, in fact, converge in this space. Okay? And what we learned yesterday is that the space M is complete. So we know already that this Cauchy equation. we know already that this Cauchy sequence converge in this space, okay? So yesterday we saw that this space is complete, as was explained by Gérard yesterday. Then there is the sequence converge to some space YD in M. Okay? Just by completeness of M modulo isometry. Okay? So what remains to show is that this limit that we have by completeness of M verify all those properties. Okay? It is the only thing we have to check. All right? And then, so we have to check that this limit satisfies all property of M, D, delta H. Okay? And so there are some. So for this, we rely on a result by Guillemette-Reviron, which actually published a paper where she showed that among all those properties, she checks that the more complicated ones are satisfied. So what are they? So I don't state I don't state her result too precisely because it's quite technical. But basically, what it says, this result, is that the limiting compact metric space has a universal cover, which is not obvious. You know that there are spaces, wild spaces with no universal cover, and the Gromov-Hausdorff convergence a priori could allow limiting spaces, which would be horrible in some sense. So, but in this case, it has a universal cover H tilde D tilde. So this is the first thing. Moreover, the entropy is continuous. So moreover, the entropy of yn tilde dn tilde. So I recall that in this set, all spaces have a universal cover. So the entropy of these spaces converges to so there is continuity of entropy. And she also proved that if you look at the fundamental group of the sequence of spaces yn, then after a while, they all are isomorphic to the fundamental group of the limit. Okay? So the fundamental group stabilized after a moment. Okay? So isomorphic to pi1 of y for n larger than some n0. Okay? And then what remains to show after this these things, there are, I mean, she does all the complicated stuff, and what remains to show is that the universal cover of the limiting space is delta hyperbolic and locally cat 0, okay? Which means that this space, the universal cover is cat 0, okay? But so remains to show, so it's not complicated, this part. So it remains to check that y tilde d tilde is delta hyperbolic and that it is cat 0. And but these properties are properties which are defined by distance things, and so this is really the easy part, because if you take a triangle in the limit x tilde d tilde, then by definition of Hausdorff convergence, this point x, y, z will be approximated by point xn, yn, and zn by a triangle in y tilde n d tilde n, and with just because of continuity of the distance, by definition of the Gromov-Hausdorff conversion, then those properties can easily seen to be satisfied at the limit, just using continuity of the distances, okay? So I am cheating a little bit because it's not as simple, but it is the basic idea, and it's not that more difficult as what I said, okay? So this state completeness, so just for you, it's a good exercise to show that cat0, delta hyperbolicity is continuous under Gromov-Hausdorff distance. It's a good exercise to do so. Let me just put this as an exercise. Okay, so now we can come up to the compactness. Okay, can I erase? Are you ready? Okay. Any question? So basically, what I have said is that somebody else did the job for us. Okay, for completeness. So this Reviron result is published in Commentari Helvetici in the, I don't remember when, but in the lately 90s, I think. Okay. I was checking, but Gerard doesn't listen. Okay. Anyway, so compactness. So since the space we are considering is complete, what we have to show is precompactness. So precompactness is enough. Precompactness. And yesterday we learned a criterion for a space of metric space to be precompact. You remember? So I just remind you what was the statement. So we consider the subspace of the space of all compact metric space, okay, which I call M prime, and M prime will be precompact, is precompact, if and only if the cardinal of, for any epsilon, the cardinal of epsilon net of element of this family is uniformly bounded. So let me just write it down. So if and only if, for any epsilon, so for any scale, then for any yd belonging to M prime, okay, then the function n epsilon of yd, what is n epsilon of yd? It is, by definition, the minimal number, the minimal cardinal of epsilon net of yd. Okay? And if this number is, for every epsilon, is bounded above by some function depending on epsilon but not on yd. Okay, so if for all compact metric space of my subfamily, this number is bounded by a number, uniformly bounded by a number which of course depends on epsilon, but not on the compact metric space, then this is the family is precompact. Okay. All right, so we have to check this criterion for our family, and it goes as follows. Okay, so we start with some. So of course we start with so M prime for us will be M prime will be our M delta dh, and I take y yd in M prime, and I want to evaluate the minimal cardinal of an epsilon set for such a manifold. So we know that in M prime, we know that the space have a universal cover. So I write the canonical projection to yd. And since the compact space has diameter less than d, of course, the ball for any point here in the universal cover, the projection is surjective. Okay, so the ball is completely is mapped onto on y, and therefore, when you choose an epsilon net of this ball, by projection, it will give rise to an epsilon net downstairs. The converse is not true, but you have an inequality, which is that n epsilon of yd is bounded above by the n epsilon of the ball upstairs, okay? All right? So I come up with the problem of estimating the minimal cardinal of epsilon net in a ball. So it starts resembling to all what we were discussing along these lectures. So an epsilon net is by definition a set of points such that every point of the space is at distance less than epsilon. So it is exactly the same. So if you consider n epsilon of this ball, so I will, for a reason which will appear in a moment, I will consider the function n epsilon for any ball, not only for the ball of radius d, and I will choose appropriately the radius at the end. We'll see. Okay. So I want to estimate the minimal number of a net cardinal of a net of such a ball, and we have such number is what we have called in one of former lecture the covering of x tilde epsilon r, because this number was exactly the minimal cardinal of a covering by ball of radius epsilon, which is exactly the same as a minimal cardinal of an epsilon net, okay? By definition of the two things, okay? And what is good with this covering is that we have you remember, maybe you don't remember, but I remind you that we had this number covering of balls by smaller balls, and we had also this packing number, okay? And so let me write what we had shown. So this is less than the packing of x tilde epsilon over 2 r plus epsilon over 2. This is one property we had showed in one of the lecture. And what is this packing of something of of x tilde and 2 radia? It is the maximal number of points in the ball of radius r plus epsilon over 2 of radius epsilon over 2, which are disjoint. Okay, and we had showed this inequality. Okay, so and we know that the packing numbers are related to the ratio which appears in the Bishop-Gromov inequality. So we feel that we get close to what we want because we want to bound this number. But we had written, we had explained the Bishop-Gromov inequality on orbit for the counting measure. So for measures which are supported on the orbit, and so we had stated a comparison between the packing number of a large ball by smaller one with the packing number which we wrote pack gamma which are the same thing, but where the ball here is we pack it by smaller ball centered at the orbit of X tilde by the group. Okay. So right. So and then what we have shown is that it is okay. So what we have shown is that if let me just hide what we have shown. So one had this kind of inequality. So so a priori the packing that you get just considering the orbit by gamma is inferior to this packing because you have less point. But since you have a group which acts with compact quotient of diameter d, one had this relation in the reverse way. But in order to be able to write this, we needed this to be positive. We needed that epsilon over 2 larger than d, which is not the case here, because what we want to show is that we want to bound this number for every epsilon, and the epsilon which are important are small epsilons, okay? And then we are kind of stuck. What we have seen also, what we learned from one of our lecture was that we had this contraction dilation trick, which allowed to pass from smaller from packing of smaller ball to packing of larger ball. And what we showed is that this number, in fact, is smaller than the packing of x tilde, lambda epsilon over 2, r plus epsilon over 2, lambda times r plus epsilon over 2, for any lambda larger than 1, okay? So we had shown these inequalities, these three first inequalities, and here what you do is you first choose lambda such that lambda epsilon over 2 is larger than d, and you put it here, okay? And then this inequality. So if lambda is large enough, for example, we'll choose let's say lambda being like 4d divided by epsilon in such a way that lambda epsilon over 2 is 2d, so that this is positive, it's okay, and the lambda is dependent on d and epsilon, so it's fine. And so let me just write it here. And this is by, it's tautological that this is exactly one of the quotient we like. So mu x tilde gamma of the ball centered at x tilde and of radius lambda r plus epsilon over 2 divided by mu x tilde gamma b of x tilde lambda epsilon over 2 minus d. Okay? And this we know by Bishop-Gromov. By Bishop-Gromov, we know that this is bounded by some number c of delta h of the radia, and all, you see the lambda you have chosen depending on d and epsilon. So now this is certainly bounded by a constant depending on delta, h, d, and epsilon. Okay? But you are done. This number doesn't depend on the quotient. Okay? And so you have checked the pre-compactness criterion. All right? Is it clear? Any question? Oh, I have chosen lambda. Just I choose lambda equal 4d divided by epsilon, and so it's just in order to be able to have this positive. Okay? Any other question? Okay, so if there are no other questions, I will now turn to topological finiteness. Olga? And now it's to get from the compactness, the topological finiteness is just a consequence of another theorem, which is due to Steve Ferry. So let me just, so about topological finiteness. Let me just introduce a definition, which is the following. So a function rho of the interval 0r to r, which satisfies rho of 0 equals 0, such that rho is continuous at 0, and such that rho of t is larger than t. So such a function is called a contractibility function for a metric space. So is a contractibility function for some space YD if every ball B x t in Y is contractible in a ball slightly larger. So rho of t is slightly a larger ball. So I recall you that rho of t is larger than t. So this ball is larger than this one. So we don't want that all balls are contractible, but we want that all balls. I mean, okay. So okay, we want that all balls are contractible in a larger ball. Okay. So maybe you have to. There are obstacles inside, but if you go a little bit further, you can contract your closed curve. Okay. Another definition. So we call M man of n rho the set of compact metric space such that X is a topological manifold of dimension n with rho as contractibility function. Okay? Okay, so in some sense, this space has a kind of local uniform property of contractibility in some sense. Every ball of every manifold of this space, every metric manifold on this space has share the same local contractibility property. Okay, and the theorem of this is a subset of M. Of course, I forgot always to say, but I quotient by the isometry. Okay, so it's a subset of the space of all metric space, compact metric space up to isometry, and the theorem of Ferry two R's, is the following. So let M prime a subset of M man n rho such that, so any subset of this set such that the closure of M prime, so the closure with respect to the Gromov-Hausdorff distance, is compact, then M prime contains finitely many topological types, meaning that there exists finite number of compact topological manifold such that any element in M prime is homeomorphic to one of these finite numbers. Okay? Hi. Okay, so what is the proof of this? What is the proof of this? Okay, so in what I have said, I have considered. I don't do the proof of this. I'm sorry. So now I have to state. It's all right. So if somebody was sleeping, now it's time to wake up. Okay, so the corollary of this theorem is the following. So we define M man of delta HD to be the set of metric space in M delta HD such that X is n topological manifold of dimension n. Okay, is compact contains same conclusion, contains finitely many topological type. Okay, and so it's a corollary because this space. So here is the point where I have to make a comment. So in what I have said, I have defined the space M delta HD with a certain list of property. I could have had, but the proof would have been a little bit more complicated. The sketch of proof would have been a little bit more complicated. I could have had that. I could have excluded elementary manifold. Okay, so I can suppose in this set that X is non-elementary. In which case we have seen that. So what about the proof of this corollary? If we assume that the space we are considering are non-elementary, then we have a bound on the systole. So if I look at YD in our space, then the universal cover has bounded systole. So I could say directly this way: the systole of Y is bounded below by some S0 depending on delta HD. Okay, and so the point is that if I add this assumption of being non-elementary, I miss some topological type, but the topological type that I have put aside is just a circle, so it doesn't change the finite topological result at the end. Okay, so I can assume that this space is non-elementary, so the systole is bounded below, and since the systole is bounded below, and since the space is locally cat zero, then you can certainly choose the function rho of t being t, and of course below the systole, the balls are contractible. Okay? Because below the systole, the ball is just isometric projection of a ball on the universal cover, and it is contractile in itself, because we are in negative curvature, and in negative curvature, you can take a ball and contract along the radius, okay, to the center of the ball. And so in this case, you can take this function, identity for the contractibility radius, and conclude using Ferri that you have finitely many topological type, okay? Okay, so that's all what I wanted to say about topological finiteness. So again, one comment. So we look at a space. We look at a space of metric space with certain geometric assumption, and there are no curvature assumption at all. I mean, one has this delta hyperbolicity, which is a kind of curvature assumption, but we have no lower bound on curvature, and in the literature, all compactness or finiteness results like this, like the Cheeger-Gromov theorem, requires lower bound on curvature to come up with a finiteness result on topological type, and here we don't need that, we just have delta hyperbolicity, diameter, and entropy, as usual, okay? It's always the same story, okay? Are there any questions? If not, I can, yeah. Yes, it is important. So it is what? Okay, so good point. So it's when you say that, it means that for some R. Okay. No, you don't need here. You don't need here. Okay. So what is important is that the R is fixed here. Okay. In the definition of. It's uniform for all elements of your family. Okay. In the example I give, it is equal. Why? I mean, most of the time it is strict. You need to go further, but if you are lucky, which is the case in this particular case, you don't need to go further. But of course, in general, you should go. You should have to go further. Okay, so if there are no other questions, I would like to change a little bit of subject. So, good news. And so I would like to talk a little bit more about growth. So Soma talked about growth of group, and I added some comment about Gromov theorem for concerning groups with polynomial growth, and I would like to talk about entropy of group. So I think Soma defined it, but I just recall you the setting. So I would like to introduce some class of problems which are related to what we said before. So the setup is the following. We look at a finitely generated group, gamma, with a finite system of finite set of generators, and as you know, gamma acts on the Cayley graph of gamma sigma with respect to the word distance. Okay. And okay, so we defined the entropy. So far we have we have worked with group acting on spaces which had some bound on its entropy. And now we are going to talk about entropy of the group itself. So the entropy of gamma sigma is just the limit, same definition, when k tends to infinity, of 1 over k logarithm of the cardinal of so I write sigma to the k, which is to be short, but what is sigma over k, it is a set of all elements, gamma. So it's a ball in the Cayley graph. It is a ball centered at the neutral element and of radius k. So it's a set of gamma in gamma such that the distance between gamma and the neutral element is less than k. Okay? So I write it this way because it's sigma, 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 sigma. It is identified to the set of elements which can be written as a product of at most k element set. And to be precise, I have to put inside the neutral element in order to make this definition correct. But it's not important. Okay. So examples. So the example. So okay, example. So the free group on two generators with respect to the canonical set of generators E1, ER. Then the entropy, so this is sigma. So the entropy of the free group, and that you can compute by yourself, with respect to this system of set of generators, is log of 2r minus 1, and it comes from the fact that you can really get a formula for the cardinal of this set, and it grows exponentially this way. And maybe I would like to give you an exercise, which in fact, I don't know how to compute this, but maybe you would know. So I consider the fundamental group of a surface of genus G with respect to the let's say the standard generating set. What is the entropy? And since I don't know the answer, I put this. Okay, so one remark that has been done by Soma in her lecture is that, so of course, first remark, the entropy depends on the entropy depends on the set of generators you have chosen. Okay? But the fact that the entropy is 0 or not doesn't depend on this choice. So this has been said. Okay, so the entropy of gamma sigma depends on sigma, but not the fact that it is 0 or not. First observation, okay? And so you would like to cook some number which would be independent of this set of generators, and it is the algebraic entropy of a group, which is just the infimum among all possible choice of finite set of generators of the entropy. Okay, so there are several questions which you could ask. So this algebraic entropy is a kind of algebraic analog of one other kind of another kind of minimal entropy that Gérard was talking about in one of his lectures. So it's similar to, so it's a remark. It is similar to the minimal entropy of a manifold. So here M is a closed manifold. Is a closed manifold, and the minimal entropy of a closed manifold is the inf for all metric G, Riemannian metric on M. So M is of dimension n of the entropy of mg, which is not a good definition because it is so the entropy of the universal cover to be short, and times the volume of mg power 1 over n, and as Gerard explained, this is scale invariant, and so it's a good candidate to be an interesting number, and so it is really parallel. Okay, those two objects are parallel. So here, it's minimal entropy among all set of Riemannian metric. Okay, what can you do? What can you do on a manifold? You vary the metric and you choose the best metric in the sense that it minimizes the entropy. Okay, so you had to normalize. If not, you would get 0 as an invariant. Okay, so another remark is that it is an interesting problem, and this problem is interesting us to compare when you are given a compact, a closed manifold. So it has a finitely generated fundamental group. Are there some relation between the two invariants? Okay, are they related? Can one get bounds of one with respect to the other? Okay, so compare algebraic. So minimal entropy of a manifold and algebraic entropy of its fundamental group. Okay, it's a question. It is an interesting question, I think. Okay, so another question which you could ask here. So we have seen examples, we know example of space with non-zero entropy. We have this closed hyperbolic surface, but what we don't know is that taking a group with exponential growth, is it true that the algebraic entropy is 0 or not? And the answer is no. There are examples. So Wilson gave example of group with such that there exists gamma, such that for any finitely generating set sigma, the entropy is positive, of gamma sigma is positive, but the algebraic entropy of gamma is 0. Okay? But the example is a bit weird, and on the other hand, there is a large class of example where we know that the entropy is positive, and the algebraic entropy also will be positive. So if gamma, so it's another result, could be showed that if gamma is Gromov hyperbolic, and non-elementary, then the algebraic entropy of gamma is positive. Okay? And the question is, a question would be, can you compute bonds, uniform bonds? Sorry? Universal bond for algebraic entropy of gamma, where gamma is hyperbolic, non-elementary. It could be that. I'm sorry. Okay, so a question would be to find a universal bound for algebraic entropy for a hyperbolic non-elementary group, and I will give some answer to this question in the next lecture. And so there are many other examples. So I'm a bit short of time. So how much time do I have? 10 minutes, okay, good. Okay, I don't negotiate. Okay, so you propose, okay. So another kind of result, Ozin showed that if gamma is solvable, but none, so we have seen that for nilpotent group, that nilpotent group have zero entropy for every set of generator. And but if Ozin showed that if, so I don't want to give the definition of solvable. So we have abelian, nilpotent, which is a little bit more complicated, and then we have solvable, which is a little bit more complicated, but which keeps some track of abelian quotient. Okay, so if gamma is solvable, not nilpotent, then the algebraic entropy of gamma is positive. And let me just give you an example which I like very much. The example is the following. So take a matrix A. So it's just the occasion to give you an exercise. So take, for example, this matrix 2, 1, 1, 1, which belong to SL2Z. Okay, and look at the group gamma A, which is the semi-direct product of Z by Z2. So this semi-direct product means the following. So gamma A is a set of elements of type n PQ. So n is in Z, and PQ is in Z2. Okay, so it's element of gamma are coded by 3 integers, and the law is the following. The multiplication is the following. So n PQ multiplied by n prime P prime Q prime equal n plus n prime, and PQ plus A. So here the matrix enters the story. A to the n P prime Q prime, where this is just the linear action. Okay? So this is a group law. And the exercise I would like you to do is the following. So exercise. So this is the definition. And it's really an exercise that you play with it. It's very instructive and interesting. So show first that gamma is a subgroup of SL 3R. Okay. And show also that it is solvable. And I will give you some hint to do this exercise. Non-nilpotent. Okay, and it has exponential growth. So you know that it has exponential growth because of Ozin theorem, but do it by yourself. Okay, do it by yourself. And the hint is to so as soon as you know that the group is a subgroup of SL3R, the hint is to make A act on the projective space of R3. Okay, we can discuss this if you wish. Okay, so the case of linear group is an interesting case. One has is what we call the Tits alternative. And maybe I will finish by this because I look at the watch and tell me if I have to stop. The Tits alternative says this thing. So take gamma, a finitely generated group, so it's a linear group, which means that it is a subgroup of G ln K, where K is a field. Think that K is R or C, okay, for example. I am very happy with R and C. Then you have an alternative. So either gamma is virtually solvable. So virtually, we have seen this several times. Virtually means it contains a subgroup of finite index which is solvable, okay? Or gamma contains a free group on two generators. At least two, I mean, a non-abelian free group. The number of generators is not important, okay? Okay, so, and therefore, so you have this, so, and I will explain you next time why having a free group create entropy. So we have seen that the entropy of a free group is positive. It's log of something, 2r minus 1, okay? So now, if a group contains a free group, or a free semi-group, then it implies also that it is of exponential group. There is some kind of formula which we can derive. Okay, so, and finding free subgroup or free semi-subgroup is the main tool that we have to show that a group has positive entropy. So in order to get lower bound on entropy of a group, when we have to find somewhere, so given a finite generating set, we have to find free two elements which generate a free group. And the difficulty, we will see next time, the difficulty is that given a set of generators, the two elements that exist and that generate a free group could be very far away, could be at distance very far away from the neutral element. And when we'll see next time that okay, it gives you positive entropy, but the lower bound gets smaller and smaller when the elements get further and further. And so finding a result like this, I mean like algebraic entropy being positive, means that for any set of generators, you have to find two elements not too far which generate a free group, okay? So maybe I stop here and I give you a rendezvous for next time.